Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. Good evening. It is 10:30 p.m. here in Calgary, Alberta. I had to move my show up a half an hour, and I'll have to do Monday, Wednesday nights. Child abuse prevention and human rights abuse prevention is up to us at 10:30 instead of 10 o'clock, just because I do another show, Dreamcatchers Talk Radio, here on Blog Talk Radio, and we had bumped our show up to an hour, and so I have to bump my show up another half hour. So sorry for the inconvenience, but it just happened today, so we just got that done. So I really didn't have a chance to let too many people know. But thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. This is a show. I like to do these shows as often as I can. This is very important to me. Child abuse prevention. It's what I do. I'm from listening. Those who listen to my shows and my archives and catch my shows live. I'm talking about abuse, and it's a sensitive subject. So you have to know. What you're okay to listen to, right? What's good for you to listen to. So you have to, be aware of that. Listen to all of my shows at your own discretion. I'm talking about abuse. It's a sensitive subject. And many people make it, find that it makes them uncomfortable, right? I've been so busy today. I've just been running steady, so my mind is a little bit kind of, here and there, but I'll get through it. So, this is, listen at your own discretion, please. And young people under the age of 18, I just ask that you have permission to listen to my shows. I just, believe in protecting children at all times. And this show is not suitable for younger children. So I have no idea how young the children are who are listening to my shows. And so it's very important if you're under the age of 18, that you have permission from an adult, somebody who's older, who's an adult, who can help you make that decision, a parent, caregiver. If you don't have a parent or caregiver, like I know how that goes, who cares, then, find somebody else, like a coach, a teacher, a mentor, somebody in your life who can listen to the show with you and help you make a decision whether or not you should be listening. Tonight's topic is, again, child abuse, child sexual abuse, and that's CSA. Just looking at child sexual abuse and the effects of child sexual abuse on children. And this is, I've read this article before many, many times, actually used this on my shows quite a bit. This is from healthyplace.com. It's www.healthyplace.com. And if you look on there, they have all kinds of tabs, information about all kinds of things. So they, if you look under the abuse tab, you'll find that there's all kinds of information about child abuse, child sexual abuse, and whatnot, domestic violence and abuse. And so tonight I want to talk about child sexual abuse. I've been talking about child sexual abuse now for weeks, maybe even months now, but it's an important issue. And for a long, long time, I just covered mainly child physical abuse, verbal, emotional, psychological abuse. I did throw in some child sexual abuse stuff, but I really am interested in this right now because I'm on my healing journey, and I'm a survivor of child sexual abuse and incest, and I'm on my healing journey. So I'm also writing my book, my memoirs, and so this is just right in the forefront of my thinking, and it's so important that we get this information out to people. Child sexual abuse is horrific. It's horrendous. It's happening all the time. Like 1 in 3 to 4 girls. And really, the stats are 1 in 3 girls now. 1 in 6 to 7 boys, and they've actually lowered those. They've actually made those stats 1 in 4 boys will experience some type of child sexual abuse under the age of 18. So whether that's unwanted sexual touching, molestation, exploitation, rape, you name it, that's too many. And no child should ever be used sexually by anyone. I don't care who they are, and whether it's a family member or a stranger. Like it's mainly almost always family members. It's about 5% stranger danger. And yet, what are families protecting their children against? Stranger danger. Oh, look out for the stranger. They will not tell the child to look out for grandma and grandpa, or look out for brother or sister, or cousin, or aunt and uncle, or uncle or aunt. This is really something. I mean, 95% of child sexual abuse, the child knows the perpetrator by seeing them, know them. These people have access to the child. And the other 5% is stranger danger. And this is what parents will teach their children. Stranger danger, watch out for stranger danger. Now, you do have to do that. You have to teach your children about stranger danger. It's very important because there's always school teachers and, coaches, mentors, daycare personnel, babysitters, right, people who have access to your child when you're at work or whatever you're doing. And also those, in the community, churches, right, that's a big one you got to watch out for. Community-centered programs, like after-school daycare, after-school programs that your children might be involved in, like sports and whatnot. You do have to be very careful, sending your kids to day camp, or summer camps. Anywhere where a child is, that's where the abuse can take place. So wherever your child is, that's where the abuse can happen, and wherever children are, that's where the abuse happens. So whether it's in their home or whether it's in someone else's home or somewhere else, this is where child sexual abuse is taking place, wherever the children are. And so, the studies that they do, they've really pretty much come up with the figures that about 38% is a parent who is sexually abusing and using the child for whatever purposes sexual abuse they're actually inflicting upon that child. And they said that about the other percentage, there's another, I think it's another 28 or 30% that it's a relative, someone close to the child, whether it's a brother, sister, aunt, uncle, cousin, grandparent, grandmother, grandfather, and then the other, whatever the remainder of that is, 12 or 13% is a daycare, someone who the child knows and trusts, right? Daycare personnel, babysitter, teacher, somebody the child actually, it's not a stranger. It's not a stranger on the street just abducting the child and sexually using the child or abusing the child. This is somebody the child knows, right? So 95% child knows, right? So this is very horrific, I'm a survivor of child sexual incest and abuse, and it was my brother. And for years I really wanted, it's not that I thought it was my dad, I wanted to believe it was my dad because my dad was sexually abusing my mother. Raping her and treating her horribly, and I talk about this on my morning show, one child abuse survivor to another, but I wanted to believe that it was my dad. And for years I actually faked myself into believing that it was my dad, even though I knew it was my brother. And the sad thing is that I loved my brother, and this can cause so many problems, with children who are abused sexually by a family member, or somebody who they really trust, who they love, who they look up to, and then that person breaks that trust. They break that level of security between them and the child. It's incredibly damaging, and it's just important to know that people out here, people say, who are these people who are sexually abusing children? Well, it's moms and dads. It's brothers and sisters. It's grandmas and grandpas. It's aunts and uncles. It's cousins. It's other children, nephews and nieces. It's, some distant relative, great Aunt Jane, right? Or third cousin Joe, it's this is who is sexually using children. And why it's allowed to go on? When a lot of times people will have a feeling, they'll have an idea. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's a sheer shock, and a surprise when somebody, actually stumbles upon a situation where a child is being abused sexually and molested or whatever, and used in some sexual manner, and it's a sheer shock of, like, wow, we had no idea. There was no way we could tell. There was no physical signs. There was no emotional signs, no behavioral changes in the child, and so a parent may not realize. But a lot of times parents do know, and they'll have these, and other people will know, and they'll be like, I kind of always had a feeling about Uncle so-and-so or Aunt so-and-so, or had an idea that Dad could be doing, and so why would people think these things if there wasn't something to direct them to think that way? People just don't go around thinking these types of things without something setting them off to have these, almost like a warning sign or a warning bell go off, and sometimes it's just completely unknown and nobody knows. But whatever the case, many times children do actually disclose abuse, and they're just disbelieved. They're just told, by the parent or somebody who they decide to disclose to. They think they can trust these people, and they think, okay, I'll tell so and so because I can trust this person. And this could be a little child or an older teen, disclosing the abuse. And many times they're just told, oh, you're just making that up, and they're just not believed, and they're not the child's not gotten any help at all, right? This happens all the time. And either that or the person that the child tells knows but doesn't do anything about it. That's what happened in my case. That my mother knew because I told her what was going on. I actually explained in as much detail as I could at that age, at 8 years old, what was happening, that my brother was doing things to me at night that was hurting me. And I actually pointed to where it was hurting me, which was my vagina. And actually told her I was having a lot of pain and a lot of, it was bothering me, it was itching and painful. And my mother just said, that's not my problem. You deal with it. She didn't say it in exactly those words. It was a lot worse than that. But she just said, it was not her problem. I was to deal with it. and I was just to wrap myself up like a mummy and deal with it. That was her response, right? So, I mean, this is horrific, right? And sometimes children just won't disclose it. Sometimes a child will not tell, and they will keep that to themselves forever and ever and ever, and they will never ever let anybody know that they were ever sexually abused in any way. I'm telling the world, right? And the reason, and people would say, well, why are you telling the world? Why would you air your dirty laundry out on public radio? The issue is that I'm a child abuse prevention advocate, and I'm actually writing right now a book about my memoirs about the CSA incest. But I will be writing many, many, many more books. What I'm working on right now is my healing journey, and by writing these books, it's allowing me to deal with what I need to deal with at the same time as I write the book, which is great therapy. It's like journaling. It's reaching out. It's telling the world, hey, look what this person did to me. Look what happened to me. I'm in pain. I need help. I'm a survivor, whatever. I'm actually doing quite well, to be honest with you. But I still have a lot of pain. I have a lot of pain physically as well as emotionally, psychologically, right? And so, I wanted the world to see what abuse does to a child and what they will go through as an adult when they have to deal with it and they have to try to make sense of it and they have to try to heal and overcome this stuff, And so this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. But it's also for my healing journey, and it's also to raise awareness, of what this stuff will do to a child if there's no help for them. So it's just so important that people realize that this stuff is happening whether we want to believe it or not, or whether we want to see it or not. Just because we all want to pretend that child sexual abuse doesn't happen doesn't mean that there'll be approximately 8,000 children who will be sexually abused tonight. And that's an average, they just average it out. But, there's approximately 8,000 children every day will be sexually used in some way in North America. And so, while we sleep and slumber, in our peaceful little beds, right, there'll be children out here who will be being raped and sodomized. And if they're not being raped and sodomized, they'll be being sexually used in some way, exploited, pornography, molested, right, abused in some way sexually, right? So it's so important to realize that. Just because we want to pretend this doesn't happen and watch our TV shows and go to bed, doesn't mean that a child is not suffering somewhere, and people would say, well, so what's me? I got to get a good night's sleep because I got to go to work tomorrow. Well, that's all well and good. We do. We have to get up and do our thing. But the thing is that we got to keep in mind this is happening and protect the children in your home, first of all. Protect the children in your lives. Get involved with an organization who's doing some great work, Like I'm with Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. I'm so glad and so happy that they allowed me to be a part of their organization, not for profit. We're working as hard as we can to stop child abuse. And, it's a great thing for me. It's great. It's actually part of my healing journey because it allows me to feel like I have some control over this situation of what happened to me as a child, that I have the control to say stop child abuse, and that I have the control to push for better laws and to push for better protection of children. So it does allow me that sense of satisfaction and a bit of control over my situation of a lifetime of being out of control because of the abuse that I suffered. So it's a great thing, So get involved with an organization that you believe is doing some good work, whether it's Dreamcatchers for Abused Children or whether it's, someone else out there. But there is some good organizations out there doing some great work. So make sure you do get involved with somebody, right, and give them a helping hand, because we need to stop this mess, right? So they talk about child sexual abuse on this website, the effects of child sexual abuse on children, psychological trauma of child sexual abuse. So they say that no child is psychologically prepared to cope with repeated sexual stimulation, and even a 2 or 3-year-old who cannot know that sexual activity is wrong will develop problems resulting from the inability to cope with the overstimulation. Isn't that the truth? That's what I deal with on a daily basis. The child of 5 or older who knows and cares for the abuser becomes trapped between affection or loyalty for the person and the sense that the sexual activities are terribly wrong. So if the child tries to break away from the sexual relationship, the abuser may threaten the child with violence or loss of love. And when sexual abuse occurs within the family, the child may fear the anger, jealousy, or shame of other family members, or be afraid of that the family will break up if the secret is told. So many times that's what the abuser will tell the children. If you tell, I'll have to leave, and it'll break up the family, and then everybody will blame you, and they'll be mad at you, and putting the guilt and the pressure on the child to remain silent. And we see a lot of that out here, and also, just blaming the child, saying, "Oh no, but you'll be in trouble because you were the one that wanted this. This is your fault." Making the child feel like it's their fault. And when it's not, it's clearly not ever the child's fault. How could it be? It's the abuser's fault. It's the person who's choosing to do this to a child. That's who's at fault. And so, and then the sense of loyalty, right? Now, I didn't have a sense of loyalty, even though I love my brother very much. And I was 8 years old. I mean, come on. But I love my brother because he was the one who was abused the most by my dad. And I felt really, actually very sorry for him. You know what I mean? Because I watched how he was treated when I was young, and like I was 6 years old, 5 years old, and I have cognitive memories of the way he was treated. And so for about 3 years, I had real cognitive memories of how he was treated, and I just hated to see that abuse put on him. But he had so many problems. He was so messed up, and it's just like I loved him dearly. He's my brother, And but I didn't have any sense of loyalty because I did tell on him, even though I was threatened. I was threatened with violence if I told. I was also, physically violently hurt because, that was part of the threat, right? And so, I thought, no, I'm still going to tell because I was in so much pain from these sexual assaults and rape, that I really, I had to tell. And so I was really getting concerned because I was in a lot of pain. And so I told my mom, taking a risk because my mother was my main abuser. I thought, oh my gosh, if she doesn't want to hear what I have to say today, I could be beaten for just telling her, which was always a possibility with her. And so I told her anyway. I came out with it, and I said, oh God, here I'm going to tell her. But I told her, and nothing happened, right? She just allowed her 21-year-old son to sexually use me for about 7 months, and that's horrific, right? And I mean, people say, well, how do you really know that's the truth? And it's like, well, of course I do, like, I mean, there's the issue is that the memories are from a long, long time ago, but the pain is real, and the idea of of talking to him on the phone when I was 13 and him telling me that he loved what he did to my body, and he this is how sick and twisted he was. And he was killing himself. So he was committing suicide. He actually talked to me for a period of about 10 minutes or so while my mom ran across the street to use another phone to call the cops to get him some help, right? Because he was killing himself. And the only thing he didn't say, oh, how are your grades? I mean, I was 13. I mean, it was just the ninth going on to the 10th grade. He didn't say anything like, well, how's your grades been? Have you been behaving yourself? How you doing? It was like, I loved, how your body felt, I loved how you had, it was a sexual soft, not a baby soft, sexual. And he was just getting off on talking to me about my body. And I was just like, oh my God, my brother's killing himself. Here I was feeling bad for him. Now I don't feel bad for him at all. He can just go ahead and kill himself. So that was what was going on in my mind. So then I didn't care. And I was like, whatever, just kill yourself, buddy. Because I was so upset by that because, this had been 5 years later after the sexual assault, the rape, and the sodomy had occurred. I mean, and it was severe sexual assaults, and, we're talking, full on. And so, I was just like, okay, forget you, buddy. So I did. I stuffed it down. And then when I was 21, went to the gynecologist and told him I was a virgin, right, because really I thought that I was. I mean, I didn't want to believe I had been raped. I did not want to believe that could even have happened to me when I was 8 years old. And I chose to believe I was a virgin. I just wouldn't let anybody touch me, And so I went to the gynecologist, and they were like, you've got scar tissue here you were sexually abused as a child. I was like, well, I'm a virgin. They were like, well, you're an adult now, so you have the choice to say what you're going to say, but we're going to record it the way we're going to record it, which is the way we see it. And I was like, well, they said, no, your hymen is ripped away and it's scarred. You've got scarring on the lower part of your womb and uterus, and you've been sexually abused. I was like, well, I'm a virgin. So, you want to talk about messed up, I mean, that's how horrific this stuff really is for a child. Like, my mind could not take what was happening to me. I had to split. I had to dissociate. And, and like, I didn't even really understand dissociation for a long time. I thought that for sure I did not dissociate. But I always had these memories that were stuffed really, stuffed where I thought they were far, far down. Actually, they were just on the surface. But I was just not looking at them. They were just that much far away enough that I didn't have to see them until I wanted to recall it, which was until I decided to recall it, which I really wanted to. I wanted to get to the bottom of this. I want to put it behind me. I want to first be able to deal with it and feel it and grieve it, mourn it, be angry about it, whatever I need to do to get through these feelings, that I needed to do when I was 8 years old and needed serious help with, but didn't get any help. And so now I'm dealing with this as an adult. No child should ever have to go through this, ever. And this is the seriousness of child sexual abuse. And people would say to me, and I talk about this on every show because I'm so angry about it. It's obvious because it's all I do make a point to mention this on every one of my shows, is that people say, what's the big deal about CSA, child sexual abuse? I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, I'm barren. I cannot bear children because somebody decided to rape and abuse me sexually. You want to talk about affecting somebody's life, I have pain in my abdomen, in my uterus, and my womb all the time. A constant pain. You want to talk about, giving somebody some grief, right? My hips are screwed, right? Like I had a car accident when I was 18, and they said you have some serious damage to your body. You were either abused as a child or you were clumsy. Like I said, well, a bit of both, and they were like, your hips are messed up. Like one of your hips is completely out of socket. You're going to have huge problems when you get older. You're not going to probably be able to bear children. And where does that come from? That came from, first of all, my dad pulling my hip out of my socket when I was 6 years old. Hit my hip out of the socket in a beating that he was dishing out, and then my brother sexually abusing me and raping me. All right. That's where that comes from. So I've had to deal with this my whole life. But that's just the physical stuff. That doesn't even talk about the psychological stuff. The fact that I just couldn't let anybody touch me. I couldn't even have a boyfriend in high school. I couldn't go to a school dance. I didn't want anybody to ask me out. I couldn't even tolerate. Like, I had guy friends, but it was friends only, and these guys knew that. Like, and I kept myself very much looking like a tomboy, so that nobody would be sexually interested in me, right? So I dressed really rough, kind of like a tomboy, right? So I used to be called a dyke and everything else because I didn't dress like a girl, but I didn't want to draw attention to myself, right? And so I didn't want to, this is why I did that. So it's a matter of protection, right? And which I was just that 8-year-old girl trying to protect myself, right? And so, huge ramifications to my life. I'm never going to know what it's like to go to prom, right? And dance with my sweetheart. Never going to know that. I'm never going to know what that Sweet 16, prom dance thing is all about, right? I'm never going to be able to experience that. And people would say, oh, what's the big deal? It's a big deal to me, And that first kiss, that first, little kiss, when you're young, that sort of thing, right? It's never going to be magical for me. It's like, it has serious psychological effects on people. You bet it does. I've had huge problems with my body my whole life, but thankfully I've been able to work through a lot of my sexuality issues, And like today I stand a woman, and I stand strong, right? And that's due to some awesome experiences that I've had in my life. It hasn't just all been abuse. I've had some great times in my 20s and in my 30s and even in my 40s. But this is the impact it will have on people, is that at the end of the day, in the back of my mind, I can still hear my voice crying and sobbing because I'm being raped and sodomized. Like that little voice, my little 8-year-old voice is still crying inside my ears because I can still hear my ears, my inner ear of her voice, which was me at the age of 8 years old, crying and sobbing and moaning in agony and pain as I'm being raped and sodomized. That doesn't go away, right? It stays with me all the time. As well as the beatings that I took from my mother. That voice is always there too. And that's that's my 13-year-old voice, my 10-year-old voice, my 9-year-old voice. Like those are always in my head. They don't go away, right? That's because it's part of me. And I remember and recognize my voice at those times, and those events were so traumatic that they just stay with me. And that's the psychological scarring of the brain, The traumatic event was just so traumatizing that it just makes a little scar in your brain, and that's where you will stay, until you can deal with it and actually, at some point, make some peace with it, which is what I've been doing. But it's a huge issue, and people would dare to say to me, "What's the big deal about child sexual abuse or any type of abuse?" And that's why I'm out here doing what I'm doing, to raise awareness. People would say, "Why would you bother going public with your story?" For this very reason, I want people to know what happens to children that don't get any help, right? There's so many children out here that do get help, they will be screwed. But guess what? There's so many children out here who will not get any help, and they will be really screwed if they even live to survive it. If they don't even self-destruct and kill themselves, which 2 of my brothers killed themselves, right? Well, one of my brothers killed himself, the one that sexually abused me. He killed himself, finally. So, this stuff is so messed up. It is so messed up, and people want to just excuse it away, minimize it, make it, and that's one thing that I will never do. You will not ever catch me minimizing abuse, because it is so horrific, that parents could even verbally assault their children, emotionally assault their children, which they do all the time. And they say, "Oh, I would never do that." Well, yes, you do. Everybody emotionally assaults everybody at some time. Verbally assault, psychologically assault, let alone physically assault, which is just huge, because then it encompasses all the psychological stuff and the emotional stuff, right? And quite often the verbal stuff in there too. And the child sexual abuse, whether it's violent or whether it's molestation, and whether it's just a game or whatever it is, it will cause problems for that child, right? And so, this is why I do what I do. And, I hope that everybody will get on the bandwagon and start talking about this stuff and making some noise for these kids out here tonight, these 8,000 or so little babies and children or more who will be raped and sodomized, who will be molested, who will be sexually used in some way, sexually abused by someone out here tonight, So, while we're all sleeping, we can sort of think about that, right? This is horrific, and it never ever should happen, and it's got to stop, right? And so, do what you can to get involved in your own local areas, make some noise. I want to just talk about Dreamcatchers Talk Radio. We're going to an hour. That's on Blog Talk Radio here, and I do shows there Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night, as well as Friday night. And it's a great program. I hope everybody will check it out. It's an awesome program. We're on for an hour. Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. We have, if you go to the Blog Talk search bar, just type in Dreamcatchers, DREAM, Dreamcatchers, CATCHERS, and all one word. And it'll take you to Dreamcatchers Talk Radio, and on Blog Talk Radio. Otherwise, it's www.blogtalkradio.com/Dreamcatchers, right? And tomorrow night we have Carol D. Levine on the show. And I had her on my show here not too long ago. And Carol D. Levine is the author of Panic Child. And she's a survivor. She's not only a survivor of child, abuse, of all the different types of abuse, really, but she's also a survivor of stranger rape, as a stranger abduction rape as a child. And I mean, my God, thankfully she survived, right? Thank God. And her story is powerful, and she's an amazing lady, and she's also a huge prevention advocate, and she really is talking, and she's out here making some noise, and I consider her to be a good friend of mine, and so I hope you will, check out the show tomorrow night on Dreamcatchers Talk Radio, and then Wednesday night we have Use Your Voice, Power of Advocacy. I'll be on there as well, so I'll be back on tomorrow morning, my show, One Child Abuse Survivor to Another, and same time, same place, 6 o'clock a.m. And, thanks very much for being here, everybody. I appreciate y'all tuning into my shows. I have a lot of shows listened to, over 34,400 shows or something. Thank you all so much for tuning in to listen to what I have to say. I can't tell you what it means to me. You know what I mean? This has been November will be 2 years that I've been on here, and this will be really 2 years of my healing journey on this radio program, Blog Talk Radio. And I appreciate everybody who's taken the time to listen to what I have to say. I really do appreciate it. I was silenced as a child. I was bound and gagged and raped, and I need to talk. And so, I appreciate you all being here and being part of this with me, right? Thanks very much. Have a great night. Talk to you soon.